Maya Chen had always been forgettable. In school, teachers would skip over her name during attendance, their eyes sliding past her desk as if she occupied some blind spot in their vision. Colleagues at the research facility would bump into her in hallways, apologizing to empty air before realizing someone was actually there. Even her own family sometimes forgot to set a place for her at dinner. She had learned to navigate this strange curse of invisibility, this quirk of genetics or psychology that made her fade into backgrounds like human camouflage. Maya never questioned why security cameras seemed to malfunction when she walked by, or why facial recognition software consistently failed to detect her presence. She simply accepted it as another oddity in a life full of being overlooked. The day everything changed started like any other. Maya arrived at the Titan research station orbiting Jupiter, her small transport ship docking without fanfare. She was there to study the exotic matter samples collected from Europa's subsurface ocean, work that had consumed the last 5 years of her life. The station buzzed with activity as scientists from across the Sol system gathered to analyze humanity's most significant discovery yet. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the station director, barely acknowledged Maya's arrival. The orientation briefing passed in a blur of safety protocols and research schedules. Maya found herself assigned to Lab 7, a quiet corner facility where she could work undisturbed on her crystalline formations analysis. It was perfect for someone who preferred to remain unnoticed. The attack came without warning. Maya was deep in her research, examining a particularly fascinating sample that seemed to pulse with its own internal light, when the station's emergency klaxons began wailing. Through the lab's porthole, she watched in horror as massive alien vessels emerged from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. The ships were unlike anything in human databases, their hulls covered in writhing patterns that hurt to look at directly. The first energy blast struck the station's main hub, vaporizing an entire section and everyone inside. Maya watched Dr. Hawthorne's office disappear in a flash of searing light, along with 20 other researchers she had just met hours earlier. The alien ships moved with predatory grace, their weapons systematically dismantling the station's defenses. Panic consumed the remaining crew. Maya could hear screaming through the comm systems as people ran for escape pods, only to watch them get picked off by smaller alien fighters. The creatures were methodical, efficient, and utterly merciless. They wanted no prisoners, no survivors to tell Earth what had happened here. Maya pressed herself against the lab wall as heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The aliens had boarded the station. Through the reinforced glass, she caught her first glimpse of humanity's attackers. They stood 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in segmented armor that seemed to be part of their natural biology. Multiple arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and their heads featured clusters of red eyes that glowed like ember coals. One of the creatures stopped directly outside her lab. Maya held her breath, certain she was about to die. The alien pressed its face against the glass, those burning eyes scanning the interior. Maya stood frozen just 2 meters away, but the creature's gaze passed right through her. After several tense seconds, it moved on, convinced the lab was empty. That was when Maya realized her curse might actually be humanity's greatest weapon. These aliens, for all their advanced technology and superior firepower, shared the same strange blind spot that had plagued her entire life. To them, she was as invisible as she was to everyone else. The station shuddered as more sections were destroyed. Maya knew she had to act fast. She activated her personal computer and began uploading everything she could find about the alien attackers. Ship configurations, weapon signatures, tactical patterns, anything that might help Earth prepare for what was coming. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as explosions grew closer. The upload completed just as her lab door exploded inward. 3 aliens stormed inside, their claws gleaming as they searched for any remaining humans. Maya stood perfectly still in the center of the room as they ransacked her equipment, looking for data cores or survivors. One alien passed so close she could smell its metallic breath, but it never even glanced in her direction. After they left, Maya accessed the station's communication array. She sent her collected data toward Earth in a tight beam transmission, then began planning her next move. The aliens were being thorough, but they were also predictable. They cleared each section methodically before moving on, confident in their superiority. Maya had always been invisible to the world, but now she understood why. Evolution, fate, or simple cosmic irony had given humanity a ghost in the machine. While the aliens celebrated their easy victory over the defenseless research station, They had no idea they were being watched, studied, and cataloged by someone they could never see. She gathered what supplies she could carry and prepared to shadow these creatures back to their ships. If she was going to be humanity's invisible guardian, she needed to learn everything about their enemies. The aliens thought they had achieved a perfect victory, but they had made one critical mistake. They had failed to account for the girl who had spent her entire life being overlooked. Maya followed the alien boarding party through the dying station, moving like a shadow behind creatures that could end her life with a casual swipe of their claws. The aliens communicated through a series of clicks and harmonic vibrations that made her bones ache. She recorded everything on a small device tucked inside her jacket, building humanity's first comprehensive database of their new enemies. The creatures called themselves the Kythera, as near as Maya could translate from their guttural language. They were an ancient species that had conquered 17 star systems, enslaving or exterminating any race they encountered. Their technology was built on principles that defied human understanding, powered by something they called void essence that allowed them to tear holes through space-time itself. Maya learned all this by standing invisible in their command centers, listening to their tactical discussions. The Kythera had been watching humanity for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. Earth's expansion into the outer system had finally triggered their interest. To them, humans were nothing more than clever animals who had learned to play with fire. The alien commander was a massive specimen called Thexvor, whose armor bore the scars of countless battles. He stood before a holographic display showing Earth's major population centers, discussing deployment strategies with his subordinates. Maya watched in growing horror as they planned the systematic extermination of her species. But the Kythera had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. They had observed human military capabilities, technological development, and population distribution. What they had never detected was the existence of people like Maya, individuals who seemed to exist in the blind spots of perception itself. After 6 hours of reconnaissance, Maya made her way to the alien flagship's docking bay. The massive vessel was a work of dark artistry, its hull inscribed with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when viewed directly. She slipped aboard during the chaos of departure, hiding among cargo containers filled with salvaged human technology. The journey to the Kythera staging area took 3 days. Maya survived on emergency rations while learning the ship's layout and observing alien routines. The crew numbered in the thousands, all preparing for humanity's final extinction. They spoke of Earth as if it were already conquered, dividing up territories and arguing over which human cities would make the best examples. The Kythera fleet assembled in the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt, hidden behind a massive asteroid field. Maya counted over 200 warships, each one capable of glassing an entire continent. The sight should have filled her with despair, but instead she felt a cold determination settling in her chest. These creatures thought they were apex predators, but they had never encountered a human who refused to be seen. During her 3rd night aboard the flagship, Maya made her first move. She accessed one of their secondary computer systems, uploading a virus she had coded during the voyage. The program was designed to create subtle errors in their navigation systems, nothing obvious enough to trigger alarms, but sufficient to throw off their precision targeting. The Kythera discovered her sabotage 2 hours before their planned departure for Earth. Alarms shrieked through the ship as security teams swept every compartment, searching for the impossible stowaway. Maya pressed herself against a bulkhead as armed aliens thundered past, their sensors sweeping frantically for any sign of human presence. Commander Thexvor himself joined the search, his massive form filling the corridors as he hunted for the ghost in his machine. Maya watched him pass within arm's reach, close enough to see the fury burning in his cluster of eyes. The great commander who had destroyed countless civilizations was being humiliated by an enemy he couldn't even detect. After 12 hours of fruitless searching, the Kythera convinced themselves the sabotage had been a delayed activation from equipment stolen from the research station. They couldn't conceive of a human actually being aboard their flagship, invisible and undetectable. Their arrogance became Maya's greatest advantage. She continued her campaign of invisible warfare, targeting different systems each day. Weapons calibration protocols mysteriously corrupted. Communications arrays developed strange interference patterns. Life support systems and empty sections randomly activated. wasting precious resources and creating false readings throughout the ship. The Kythera crew grew increasingly paranoid. They installed additional sensors, posted extra guards, and ran continuous diagnostic sweeps. Nothing worked. Maya had spent her entire life being overlooked by technology and organic perception alike. Their advanced alien sensors were no different from human security cameras or facial recognition software. By the time the fleet began its approach to Earth, Maya had gathered enough intelligence to change the course of the war. She knew their battle formations, their communication frequencies, their weapon signatures, and most importantly, their psychological weaknesses. The mighty Kythera were showing signs of superstitious fear, some crew members whispering about ship spirits and ancient curses. Maya activated a hidden transmitter she had cobbled together from alien components, sending a compressed data burst toward Earth. The message contained everything she had learned, along with detailed schematics of Kythera technology and tactical recommendations for Earth's defense forces. As the alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Maya prepared for the next phase of her mission. She had spent weeks studying Kythera psychology and had identified their greatest weakness. These creatures conquered through overwhelming force and psychological intimidation. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't understand. The girl who had always been invisible was about to become humanity's most visible hope. But first, she had to survive what came next. Because Commander Thexvor was starting to suspect that his ship might be haunted by something far more dangerous than any spirit. He was beginning to believe in ghosts, and Maya was about to prove that some ghosts could bite back. Earth's defense grid activated the moment Maya's transmission reached home. Admiral Sarah Kong read the intelligence report 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Hidden among the technical specifications and tactical analyses was a simple message that changed everything. You are not alone. The invisible are watching. Maya's data revealed that the Kythera invasion force would arrive in 18 hours. More importantly, it provided detailed schematics of their void essence technology and identified a critical vulnerability in their ship designs. The aliens powered their vessels through massive generators that created small tears in space-time. But these same generators were susceptible to harmonic interference. Admiral Kong immediately dispatched the intelligence to Dr. James Harrison at the Luna Research Facility. Harrison was Earth's leading expert on exotic physics, and if anyone could weaponize Maya's discoveries, it would be him. Meanwhile, Kong began implementing the tactical recommendations hidden in the data burst. The Kythera fleet approached Earth like a cosmic storm, their ships emerging from hyperspace in a formation designed to maximize psychological impact. Commander Thexvor stood on his flagship's bridge, expecting to see panic and chaos as humanity's primitive defenses crumbled before his superior firepower. Instead, he found Earth's military waiting for him. Human ships had been repositioned according to Maya's recommendations, creating overlapping fields of fire that targeted the exact weak points she had identified. More disturbing to Thexvor was the complete absence of fear in human communications. These creatures should have been begging for mercy, but instead they spoke with calm professionalism about targeting solutions and firing sequences. Maya watched the battle begin from her hiding place aboard the Kythera flagship. She had spent the past day preparing for this moment, using stolen alien technology to build a device that would turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The harmonic disruptor she had constructed was small enough to fit in her palm, but it was calibrated to the exact frequency of the ship's void essence generators. The first exchange of fire went better than Admiral Kong had dared hope. Earth ships targeted the Kythera vessel's weapon arrays using precise coordinates Maya had provided, crippling several alien warships before they could return effective fire. But the human fleet was still outnumbered 10-1, and conventional weapons could only do so much against void essence shielding. That was when Maya activated her disruptor. The device sent a cascading harmonic pulse through the flagship's power grid, causing the void essence generators to fluctuate wildly. Lights flickered throughout the massive vessel as containment fields struggled to maintain stability. In the engine room, Kythera engineers screamed warnings about cascade failures and dimensional breaches. Commander Thexvor felt his ship shudder beneath his feet and knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. His flagship was the most advanced vessel in the Kythera fleet, its systems protected by redundancies and fail-safes that had never been breached. Yet somehow something was tearing apart his ship from the inside. Maya moved through the chaos like a phantom, her invisibility allowing her to reach critical systems while the crew frantically tried to prevent a total power failure. She planted additional disruptors throughout the ship, each one tuned to create maximum disruption in the Void Essence network. The flagship was becoming a liability to its own fleet. The harmonic interference began spreading to other Kithra vessels as Maya's disruptors created a feedback loop through the fleet's synchronized power grid. One by one, alien ships found their shields failing and their weapons offline. The mighty armada that had conquered 17 star systems was being crippled by sabotage they couldn't even detect. On Luna, Dr. Harrison watched the battle unfold through long-range sensors, analyzing the energy signatures Maya's sabotage was creating. He quickly realized what she was doing and began broadcasting a matching harmonic frequency from Luna's deep space communication array. The signal amplified Maya's disruptors, turning the entire Kithara fleet into a resonating chamber of unstable void essence. Commander Thexvor ordered his fleet to retreat, but it was too late. The harmonic cascade had reached critical mass, and Kithara ships were experiencing power failures across the board. Worse, the aliens were beginning to panic. Their technology was supposed to be invincible, their conquest of humanity inevitable. The sudden appearance of an enemy that could turn their own weapons against them shattered their confidence. Maya knew this was her moment. She made her way to the flagship's main communication array and began broadcasting on all Kithara frequencies. She used their own language, words she had learned during her weeks of invisible observation, to deliver a message that would echo through their empire for generations to come. "I am the voice of the invisible," Maya transmitted, her words reaching every ship in the fleet. "You came to destroy what you could not see, but you never imagined that what you could not see might fight back. We have walked among you, learned your weaknesses, and turned your strength into our weapon. You call yourselves conquerors, but you are blind to the very people you seek to exterminate." The effect on the Kithara was immediate and profound. These creatures had spent centuries believing in their own superiority, convinced that no lesser species could threaten their technological dominance. Now they faced an enemy that existed beyond their perception, one that could strike from anywhere at any time. Maya continued her broadcast, describing in precise detail how she had infiltrated their flagship, studied their tactics, and sabotaged their systems. She revealed knowledge that only someone who had been physically present could possess. Yet the Kithara sensors insisted no human life signs existed aboard any of their vessels. Fear began to spread through the alien fleet like a virus. Crew members reported seeing shadows in empty corridors, hearing footsteps where no one walked, feeling watched by eyes they couldn't locate. The psychological impact was devastating. The Kithara had never encountered an enemy they couldn't fight, and the concept of invisible humans moving freely among them triggered primal terror. Commander Thexvor tried to maintain order, but his own resolve was cracking. His flagship continued to suffer system failures despite his engineers' best efforts. Every time they repaired one problem, two more appeared. The ship was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that might or might not actually exist. As Earth's forces pressed their advantage, exploiting the chaos Maya had created, she prepared for the final phase of her plan. The Kithara fleet was broken, their morale shattered, but they were still dangerous. Maya had one more gift to give her species, and it would ensure that humanity never again faced the threat of Kithara invasion. She was going to teach these alien conquerors what it truly meant to fear the invisible. Maya descended into the deepest levels of the Kithara flagship, following maintenance tunnels that led to the ship's central core. Here, in the heart of the vessel, lay the quantum communication array that connected this fleet to the Kithara Empire's vast network. Every command ship carried one, allowing instantaneous communication across galactic distances. The core chamber was a cathedral of alien technology, its walls lined with crystalline structures that pulsed with void essence energy. Maya had studied these systems during her weeks of observation, learning that the Kithara used quantum entanglement to maintain contact with their far-flung conquests. More importantly, she had discovered that these arrays were two-way conduits, capable of transmitting more than just messages. Maya began connecting her improvised harmonic disruptors to the quantum communication matrix. If her calculations were correct, She could send the disruptive frequency directly into the Kythera Empire's communication network, potentially affecting every ship and installation connected to the grid. It was a desperate gamble, but the potential payoff was enormous. Above her, the battle continued to rage. Earth's forces had disabled or destroyed nearly a third of the Kythera fleet, but the aliens were adapting to the harmonic interference. Their engineers were finding ways to isolate affected systems, slowly restoring power to their weapons and shields. Admiral Kong knew her window of opportunity was closing fast. Commander Thexivor had finally reached a terrifying conclusion. His ship was definitely haunted by an enemy he couldn't detect, but this enemy wasn't supernatural. It was human. Somehow, impossibly, a human had infiltrated his flagship and was systematically destroying it from within. The implications sent ice through his veins. If humans possessed individuals who could remain completely undetectable to Kythera senses and technology, then every ship in the Empire was vulnerable. The Kythera had conquered 17 star systems by assuming technological and biological superiority over their enemies. But what use was superior firepower against an enemy you couldn't even see? Thexivor ordered his remaining ships to begin charging their planet-killer weapons. If he couldn't defeat these invisible humans in ship-to-ship combat, he would simply destroy Earth from beyond their reach. It was a desperate measure that violated Kythera protocols for conquest. But his fear of the unseen enemy overrode all other considerations. Maya felt the ship's power systems shift as massive energy conduits activated throughout the vessel. She recognized the energy signature from her intelligence gathering and realized with horror what Thexivor was planning. The Kythera were preparing to glass Earth's surface, sacrificing any potential resources the planet might offer, in exchange for the certainty of human extinction. She had perhaps 10 minutes before the planet-killer weapons reached full charge. Maya abandoned her careful sabotage work and began frantically connecting every disruptor she had built to the quantum communication array. Her original plan had been to send a controlled pulse through the network. But there was no time for subtlety now. The quantum matrix hummed with increasing energy as Maya forced dangerous levels of power through her improvised devices. Warning alarms screamed throughout the core chamber as the crystalline structures began to overload. Maya ignored the radiation warnings flashing on her stolen scanner, focusing entirely on maintaining the connection long enough to complete her transmission. The harmonic pulse erupted from the flagship's communication array with the force of a small star-going supernova. The signal raced through quantum space, transmitted instantaneously to every Kythera installation in the galaxy. On distant worlds where alien overseers ruled enslaved populations, void essence generators began to fail. Space stations throughout the Empire found their power grids fluctuating wildly. But the most dramatic effect occurred right here in Earth's system. Every Kythera ship connected to the communication network experienced simultaneous cascade failures as the harmonic pulse overloaded their quantum receivers. The proud fleet that had arrived to exterminate humanity found itself dead in space, their crews struggling to prevent complete system breakdowns. Commander, Thexivor watched his flagship's bridge plunge into darkness as the quantum communication array literally exploded several decks below him. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as his officers reported total communication loss with both the fleet and the Empire. His planet-killer weapons powered down as their charging sequence was interrupted by the harmonic cascade. Maya barely escaped. The core chamber as it erupted in a shower of crystalline fragments and void essence discharge. She had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes, but the effort had cost her. Radiation poisoning was already beginning to affect her system, and she knew she had perhaps hours before the exposure became fatal. But she wasn't finished yet. The Kythera fleet was crippled but not destroyed, and their crews would eventually find ways to restore basic functionality. Maya needed to ensure that when these aliens returned to their empire, they carried with them something that would prevent future invasions of human space. She made her way to Commander Thexivor's personal quarters, using the chaos of the power failure to slip past security checkpoints. The mighty Kythera leader was there, studying damage reports by emergency light, his confidence finally broken by an enemy he had never seen coming. Maya stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching this creature who had planned to exterminate her entire species. Then she stepped forward and spoke a single word in perfect Kythera: surrender. Thexivor spun around, his multiple eyes wide with terror as he searched for the source of the voice. Maya remained perfectly still, letting him experience the full impact of her invisibility. She watched recognition dawn in those alien eyes as the commander realized he was finally face to face with his invisible nemesis. "You cannot see me," Maya continued in his language, "but I have seen everything. I know your weaknesses, your fears, your protocols. I have walked among your people for weeks and not one of you detected my presence. How many more of my kind do you think exist? How many invisible humans are already aboard your ships in your cities watching your every move?" The psychological impact was devastating. Thexivore had spent his entire career believing in Kythera superiority, but now he faced an enemy that existed beyond his comprehension. The very idea that invisible humans might be infiltrating the Empire, gathering intelligence and sabotaging systems, was more terrifying than any conventional weapon. Maya delivered her final message, the words that would echo through Kythera space for generations to come. "Return to your empire and tell them what you have learned. Tell them that humanity is protected by guardians they cannot see, warriors they cannot fight, and watchers they cannot escape. If your people ever threaten Earth again, the invisible will find you. We will be in your ships, your cities, your most secure installations. You will never know when we are watching, when we are listening, or when we will strike." She left Commander Thexivore there in the darkness, paralyzed by fear of an enemy he could hear but never see. The most powerful military commander in the Kythera Empire had been reduced to a trembling wreck by a single human who refused to be noticed. Maya's work was complete, but her story was far from over. Maya collapsed in the corridor outside Thexivore's quarters, her body finally succumbing to the radiation exposure from the quantum communication array explosion. The harmonic pulse she had transmitted was already racing through Kythera space, but she would never see its full impact. Blood ran from her nose as cellular damage began, accelerating throughout her system. Admiral Kong's voice crackled through the fleet communication channels as Earth's forces pressed, their advantage against the crippled Kythera ships. The alien vessels were defenseless, their crews struggling to restore basic life support while human fighters picked them apart with surgical precision. It was a complete reversal of the expected outcome, and Kong knew they owed it all to their invisible guardian. The Kythera survivors began transmitting surrender signals after 6 hours of one-sided destruction. Of the 200 ships that had arrived to exterminate humanity, fewer than 30 remained spaceworthy. Commander Thexivore's flagship limped away from Earth, with its crew traumatized and its commander broken by his encounter with an enemy he could never forget. Maya managed to reach an escape pod bay as the last Kythera vessels prepared to retreat. Her vision was blurring from radiation sickness, but she forced herself to keep moving. She had one final mission to complete, and it required her to get back to Earth alive. The intelligence she carried in her head was too valuable to die with her in space. Dr. Harrison monitored the Kythera retreat from Luna Base, his instruments detecting the strange energy signatures that continued to pulse from their damaged ships. The harmonic frequency Maya had transmitted was having effects far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Reports were already coming in from deep space monitoring stations about unusual energy fluctuations detected from the direction of Kythera space. Maya sealed herself into the escape pod and programmed it for Earth using stolen Kythera navigation codes. The small craft detached from the flagship just as Thexivore's fleet made the jump to hyperspace, carrying their terror and confusion back to the Empire. Maya's pod drifted alone in space for 18 hours before Earth patrol ships detected its human life signs. She was unconscious when they found her, her body ravaged by radiation but still clinging to life. The rescue team rushed her to the best medical facility in the Sol system, where teams of doctors worked around the clock to repair the cellular damage. Maya drifted in and out of consciousness for 3 days, her fevered dreams filled with images of alien corridors and the sound of Kythera voices. When she finally woke, Admiral Kong was sitting beside her bed with the expression of profound gratitude and concern. Maya's first words were a request for a secure communication channel to relay everything she had learned about Kythera technology, tactics, and psychology, even dying from radiation poisoning. Her first priority was ensuring humanity's future safety. The intelligence Maya provided revolutionized Earth's understanding of their new enemies. She had observed Kythera society from the inside, learning their military protocols, their technological weaknesses, and most importantly, their deepest fears. Her psychological profile of the alien species would become the foundation for humanity's long-term defensive. strategy, but Maya's greatest contribution wasn't intelligence, it was the legend she had created. Within weeks of the Kythera retreat, reports began filtering back from deep space monitoring stations. The harmonic pulse she had transmitted through their quantum network was causing system failures throughout the Empire. More significantly, it was triggering a wave of paranoia that spread faster than any weapon. Kythera commanders throughout the galaxy began reporting impossible incidents. Crew members swore they heard human voices in empty corridors. Security cameras malfunctioned at critical moments. Systems failed in ways that suggested deliberate sabotage, but no intruders could be detected. The mere possibility that invisible humans might be infiltrating their ships and installations was driving entire Kythera crews to the edge of breakdown. Commander Thexvor's report to the High Command created a crisis that shook the Empire to its foundations. The idea that humanity possessed warriors who could remain completely undetectable challenged everything the Kythera believed about their own superiority. Military advisors argued about whether such humans actually existed, or if they were dealing with advanced technology that mimicked invisibility. The paranoia reached its peak when 3 more Kythera star systems reported mysterious technical failures that matched the harmonic signature of Maya's attack. Ships throughout the Empire began installing additional sensors and security measures, but nothing could detect an enemy that existed beyond the boundaries of perception itself. The Kythera had become afraid of shadows. Maya spent months recovering from her radiation exposure, but the doctors managed to save her life through a combination of advanced medical technology and treatments derived from alien biological samples. During her recovery, she worked with Earth's military strategists to develop new defensive protocols based on her unique experiences. The most important development was the establishment of the Invisible Corps, a special unit designed to identify and train other humans who shared Maya's unusual condition. Medical scans revealed that her ability to remain undetected was the result of a rare neurological variation that affected how others perceived her presence. Incredibly, genetic analysis suggested that approximately 1 in 10 million humans possessed similar traits. Earth's recruitment teams began searching for individuals who had experienced lives similar to Maya's, people who were consistently overlooked, forgotten, or ignored despite having no obvious reason for such treatment. They found teenagers who had never been called on in class, office workers whose contributions were constantly attributed to others, and individuals who seemed to exist in the blind spots of society itself. The training program was unlike anything in military history. These recruits learned to weaponize their invisibility, turning a lifetime of being overlooked into humanity's ultimate defensive advantage. They studied alien languages, infiltration techniques, and advanced sabotage methods. Most importantly, they learned to embrace their condition as a gift rather than a curse. Maya became the commanding officer of this new unit. Her experience aboard the Kythera flagship making her the perfect leader for humanity's invisible guardians. She established training protocols that emphasized patience, observation, and psychological warfare over direct confrontation. The Invisible Corps would be humanity's early warning system and last line of defense against alien threats. But the Kythera were not done with humanity. Even as their empire struggled with the paranoia Maya had created, military factions within their species were developing new strategies to deal with the invisible threat. They couldn't see their enemies, but they could still destroy the worlds that harbored them. Maya knew that her victory had only delayed the inevitable. The Kythera would return, and when they did, they would be prepared for invisible opponents. The next phase of the war would require different tactics, greater sacrifices, and a level of cooperation between the visible and invisible that had never been attempted before. The girl who had spent her life being forgotten was about to become humanity's most remembered hero. 3 years after the first Kythera invasion, Maya stood before a holographic display showing the expanding sphere of human space. The Invisible Corps had grown from a theoretical concept to humanity's most effective intelligence organization, with operatives infiltrating alien settlements throughout the galaxy. What they discovered there changed everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. The Kythera Empire was crumbling from within. Maya's harmonic pulse had triggered a cascade of system failures that continued to plague their technology. But the psychological impact was far more devastating. Reports from invisible operatives revealed a species consumed by paranoia and fear. Kythera military commanders regularly purged their own crews, convinced that invisible humans had infiltrated their ships. But the intelligence Maya's people gathered also revealed a terrifying truth. The Kythera weren't the galaxy's apex predators. They were middle management in a cosmic hierarchy that stretched across multiple galactic clusters. The Empire served masters called the Voidborn, ancient beings that existed partially outside normal space-time and fed on the psychic energy generated by conquered civilizations. Dr. Harrison had spent 3 years studying captured Kythera technology, finally understanding the true purpose of their void essence generators. These devices didn't just power their ships. They were collection nodes that harvested emotional energy from subjugated species and transmitted it to the Voidborn through dimensional tiers. The Kythera were essentially cosmic farmers, and their overlords were growing hungry. Maya received this intelligence while training a new batch of invisible recruits at the hidden facility on Europa. The latest class included Sarah Kim, a former accountant whose reports had been consistently ignored for 15 years, and Marcus Santos, a security guard whom criminals walked past as if he didn't exist. Each recruit brought unique skills and perspectives to humanity's shadow war. The revelation about the Voidborn fundamentally changed Earth's strategic priorities. Maya realized that defeating the Kythera would only delay humanity's extinction. The real threat came from beings that existed beyond conventional space, entities that could reach into any dimension to harvest the psychic energy of entire species. Humanity needed allies, and they needed them fast. Invisible core operatives throughout Kythera space began making contact with other subjugated species, offering hope to civilizations that had been enslaved for centuries. The Zilani were aquatic beings whose homeworld had been strip-mined for void essence crystals. The Thoric were insectoid creatures forced to build Kythera warships in massive orbital factories. All of them had been waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. Maya's greatest breakthrough came when her operatives discovered the existence of the Ethereal Archive, a hidden repository of knowledge maintained by the last free members of the galaxy's oldest species. The archivists had been fighting the Voidborn for millions of years, using their advanced understanding of dimensional physics to remain hidden from the cosmic predators. The first contact between humanity and the archivists occurred in the shadow of a dying star, where one of Maya's operatives encountered a being that existed as pure consciousness within crystalline matrices. The archivist called itself Keeper of Lost Voices, and it had been waiting for someone like Maya, a species that had learned to exist in the blind spots of perception. Through the Keeper, Maya learned that the Voidborn's greatest weakness was their inability to perceive beings that existed outside normal dimensional boundaries. The invisible humans weren't just undetectable to the Kythera, they were equally invisible to the cosmic entities that commanded them. For the first time in galactic history, a species had evolved natural immunity to Voidborn perception. The archivists revealed that they had been preparing for this moment for eons, gathering technologies and strategies for a final assault on the Voidborn's dimensional strongholds. But they had lacked the one component necessary for success: warriors who could operate undetected in the spaces between realities. Maya's people were the key to ending a cosmic war that had raged since before Earth's sun was born. Maya established a joint command center on Titan, where human invisibles worked alongside archivist consciousness entities and representatives from dozens of liberated species. The facility existed partially outside normal spacetime, hidden in the dimensional blind spots that only Maya's people could navigate safely. From here, they planned humanity's most ambitious mission yet. The Voidborn maintained their primary consciousness hub in a realm called the Nexus, a space between dimensions where normal physics didn't apply. No conventional force could reach it, and even the archivist's most advanced technology couldn't penetrate its defenses. But Maya's invisibles could walk through dimensional barriers as easily as they walked through locked doors. Training for the Nexus mission pushed the invisible core beyond anything they had attempted before. Maya's operatives learned to extend their perception-blocking abilities into dimensional space, becoming undetectable to entities that existed across multiple realities simultaneously. The process was dangerous and required volunteers who were willing to risk their sanity exploring realms that human minds weren't designed to comprehend. Sarah Kim emerged as the mission's lead scout, her accounting background proving unexpectedly valuable for mapping the mathematical structures that held the Nexus together. Marcus Santos developed techniques for moving through dimensional barriers without triggering the Voidborn's reality-sensing abilities. Together with 20 other Invisibles, they formed humanity's first interdimensional strike team. Meanwhile, the Cathara Empire continued its descent into chaos. Commander Thexivore had been executed by his own subordinates after his repeated warnings about invisible humans were dismissed as madness. His replacement, Admiral Kexthani, was determined to prove that the invisible threat was just Cathara technology failing due to poor maintenance. Kexthani launched a new invasion fleet toward Earth, equipped with redundant sensors and backup systems designed to counter harmonic interference. The Admiral was convinced that humanity's previous victory had been a fluke, a one-time sabotage operation that couldn't be repeated. She was about to discover how wrong she was. Maya watched the approaching Cathara fleet from the Titan Command Center, but her attention was focused on the dimensional readings that showed Voidborn activity, increasing throughout the galaxy. The cosmic predators were growing, impatient with their servants' failures, and were beginning to take direct action against rebellious species. The final phase of humanity's war for galactic freedom was about to begin, and Maya knew that this time, invisibility alone wouldn't be enough. They were about to face enemies that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality, beings that could reshape dimensions with their thoughts and devour entire civilizations with their hunger. But humanity had allies now, and more importantly, they had something the Voidborn had never encountered before. Warriors who could remain unseen even by entities that perceived all of reality simultaneously. The girl who had always been invisible was about to lead her people into the spaces between worlds, where the fate of every species in the galaxy would be decided in the shadows between dimensions. Maya stood at the threshold between realities, her consciousness partially phased into the dimensional space that led to the Voidborn Nexus. Around her, 22 other invisible operatives prepared for a mission that would either free the galaxy or doom humanity to cosmic extinction. The space between dimensions rippled with energies that human science couldn't explain, but Maya's people moved through it as naturally as they moved through crowded streets back on Earth. Admiral Kexithani's new invasion fleet had arrived at Earth 6 hours earlier, only to discover that humanity was no longer the primitive species they had encountered 3 years ago. Earth's defenses now included technology, gifted by the archivists, weapons that could tear holes in space-time itself, and most importantly, an entire network of invisible operatives who had been waiting for the Kithra's return. The second invasion lasted exactly 47 minutes. Maya's people had infiltrated every ship in Kexithani's fleet before they even dropped out of hyperspace, armed with dimensional disruptors that could phase entire vessels out of normal reality. One moment the Cathara were preparing for orbital bombardment. The next they found themselves trapped in pocket dimensions where their weapons and communications were useless. But Maya barely noticed the Cathara defeat. Her attention was focused on the dimensional gateway that Sarah Kim had discovered during her scouting missions, into the space between realities. The passage led directly to the Voidborn Nexus, but using it required the invisible operatives to surrender their connection to normal space-time entirely. There would be no coming back from this mission. The Keeper of Lost Voices manifested beside Maya as a shimmering crystalline form that existed across 17 different dimensional frequencies simultaneously. Through their psychic link, the ancient archivist shared the accumulated knowledge of millions of years spent fighting the Voidborn. Maya absorbed tactical data, dimensional maps, and most importantly, the exact location of the Nexus core where the cosmic predators maintained their primary consciousness. Maya's team moved through the dimensional gateway like ghosts, entering a realm of pure mathematics and crystallized thought. The Nexus existed as a vast cathedral of impossible geometry, its walls formed from the psychic energy harvested from countless conquered civilizations. At its center, 7 Voidborn entities maintained eternal communion, their consciousness spanning multiple galactic clusters as they fed on the fear and despair of subjugated species. The invisible humans moved through the Nexus undetected, their natural immunity to perception extending even into realms where thought and reality were interchangeable. Maya led her team deeper into the structure, following dimensional currents that flowed like rivers of liquid space-time toward the central core. She could feel the vast malevolence of the Voidborn pressing against her mind, but their awareness slid past her just as easily as a teacher's eyes had once skipped over her in class. Sarah Kim located the first of 7 dimensional anchors that kept the Nexus stable in its pocket of twisted spacetime. The mathematical precision required to maintain such a structure was staggering, but Sarah's accounting background had prepared her for exactly this kind of systematic analysis. She began planting charges that would sever the anchor's connection to normal reality. Marcus Santos found the second anchor guarded by constructs of living shadow that served as the Voidborn's immune system. The creatures were designed to detect any intrusion into the Nexus, but they couldn't perceive threats that existed in their own perceptual blind spots. Marcus moved past them like a security guard walking through a busy lobby. Invisible even to beings made of pure paranoia, one by one, Maya's team located and prepared to destroy the 7 anchors that kept the Nexus stable. But as they worked, the Voidborn began to sense that something was wrong. The cosmic entities couldn't perceive the intruders directly, but they could feel the subtle changes in the Nexus's mathematical structure as the dimensional charges were placed. The lead Voidborn, an entity calling itself the Prime Hunger, began flooding the Nexus with waves of reality-altering energy designed to flush out any possible threats. Maya felt the dimensional space around her team shifting and warping as the cosmic predator tried to force them into visibility, but the invisible humans adapted, using techniques Maya had developed for remaining unnoticed in constantly changing environments. Maya reached the central core just as the Prime Hunger realized the true nature of the threat it faced. The massive entity manifested as a writhing mass of dark energy and twisted mathematics, its consciousness spanning light years as it searched for enemies it couldn't detect. For the first time in millions of years, a Voidborn experienced something resembling fear. Through the psychic link provided by the Keeper of Lost Voices, Maya addressed not just the Prime Hunger but all 7 Voidborn entities simultaneously. She spoke in the mathematical language of pure thought, her words carrying the weight of every species that had ever been enslaved by their cosmic appetite. "We are the invisible guardians of free will," Maya transmitted into the heart of the Nexus. "You have fed on fear and despair for eons, harvesting the psychic energy of conquered civilizations. But you made one critical mistake. You never imagined that evolution might produce beings that exist outside your perception entirely." The Voidborn responded with waves of reality-distorting fury, trying to tear the invisible humans apart with attacks that could reshape entire dimensions. But Maya's people had learned to exist in the spaces between perception itself, and their immunity to detection extended to immunity from direct assault. The cosmic predators found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't touch, couldn't see, and couldn't understand. Maya activated the dimensional charges simultaneously, severing all 7 anchors that kept the Nexus stable in its pocket dimension. The mathematical structure that had existed for millions of years began collapsing as twisted spacetime folded in on itself. The Voidborn entities screamed across 17-dimensional frequencies as their primary consciousness hub imploded. But Maya had one final gift for the cosmic predators. Using techniques taught by the archivists, she opened dimensional gateways throughout the collapsing Nexus, redirecting the Voidborn's accumulated psychic energy back to its sources. Across the galaxy, enslaved species suddenly felt hope, for the first time in generations, as the fear and despair that had been harvested from them returned in waves of liberation. Kythera Empire collapsed within hours as its void essence technology failed completely, without the Voidborn's dimensional power to sustain their conquest. The alien species found themselves reduced to refugees fleeing their own crumbling ships. Many surrendered to the species they had once enslaved, begging for mercy from civilizations they had spent centuries tormenting. Maya and her team barely escaped the Nexus before its final collapse, emerging back into normal space-time just as the dimensional structure imploded into nothingness. They had sacrificed their ability to return to their original dimension, but their mission was complete. The Voidborn were scattered across multiple realities, their unified consciousness broken and their power over galactic civilization ended forever. In the aftermath, Maya found herself appointed as the first director of interdimensional affairs for the new Galactic Liberation Council. Representatives from hundreds of freed species gathered on Earth to establish a new form of government based on cooperation rather than conquest. The invisible humans became the Council's peacekeepers, guardians who could move unseen through any civilization to prevent the rise of new tyrannies. Maya stood in her office overlooking New Geneva, watching ships from dozens of different species arriving for the first truly free galactic congress in millions of years. She was no longer invisible to the world. Her name was known and honored by every liberated civilization. But she had learned that the greatest strength came not from being seen, but from seeing clearly what others missed. The girl who had spent her life being overlooked had become the guardian of a galaxy's freedom. And in the spaces between stars, her invisible operatives continued their eternal watch, ensuring that never again would any species face extinction alone. They had taught the universe that sometimes the most powerful warriors were the ones no one ever saw coming. The invisible had become visible through their deeds, but their greatest power remained hidden in the shadows between perception and reality, where they would always be watching,